Well, guys, we are here at Peggy's Cove with the man, the myth, the legend. And
Peggy's Cove, Nova Scotia.
That's right.
If you come to Nova Scotia, this is one place you have to visit.
Yeah, it's an iconic place for reasons that you will soon discover.
So if you look up Peggy's Cove, you're gonna find that lighthouse.
Right there.
These signs everywhere for the tourists.
Yeah.
You gotta stay out the black rocks.
Yep.
Because the sea might look calm, but all of a sudden there's a rogue wave comes in and it has swept people off into the ocean. And people have unfortunately lost their lives because they go too close to the water. So these signs are everywhere. So admire from a distance.
Yup. And I value catching my plane on time. So we had a lot of conversation about karate and martial art methodology and stuff, and of course, Kata had to come up. So
Yeah, so we're talking about what kata often is today in a lot of 3K systems and the traditional karate systems versus what it was meant for. And there's quite a disconnect between the practical karate and the 3K karate. So I come back from a 3K background, and the focus in kata was the perfection of your technique. And so you do your kata, for the most part, with some exceptions, with the straight spine, your chin is up, your shoulders are down and back when you're punching, and everything has a particular place. So shotokan for the shutoke, for example, your hand is here, not up here, whereas in other styles there's some variation of that, which are absolutely completely meaningless. It's just their arbitrary aesthetics. And so there's a phrase I use quite a bit in talking about this, the 3K approach to karate. It's conforming to arbitrary aesthetic ideals. It's very much a form over function approach. This is the way you do your kata. This is the sensei, the master, will make micro corrections. So if this is my center line, if I'm punching here, the sensei will make this micro correction. And when you're punching in the air, it really doesn't matter. Obviously we're not punching randomly, and there's some benefit to that we talked about. So if you kind of pay attention to these minute little details, these micro corrections, it is a way to get in tune with your body and develop body awareness. But in terms of having a combative function, not so much. And there are some people that will argue that you train your kata and your basic kion for so many years, and eventually then you start into applying the movements.
Yeah. And
we were talking about the fact that if you're waiting until you're brown belt before you start doing some functional training, like whether it be long range kumite or close range combative techniques from kata or otherwise, if you wait until then, it's kind of too late. You've already developed this muscle memory in, let's say in shotokan, to be in a long front stance with your knees deeply bent, in the posture and everything. And it takes a lot of effort, a lot of time to break those.
Yeah.
So, and Les Bubka actually had a post today, and he was talking about this very thing, and that we shouldn't be waiting to teach our students later to break the form.
Yeah.
And that's one of my rules for Bunkai, is break the form when it comes to kata, but to teach that holistically, integrate it into your basic training.
Yeah, the amount of time spent on these things has to be, I think, something that you need to be aware of. It's like alphabet language acquisition or writing acquisition, right? We're both school teachers, so I think you'd appreciate what I'm about to say. Like, okay, I don't teach primary, but my wife does, and there's a certain amount of time that they spend on, getting the motor skills to formulate the letters. So there's confines of space. You have your lines, and you're writing in between the lines. But then, you don't spend a whole year or two on that. Once a student has acquired the shape, and we're moving on. Yeah. We're moving on to writing words and letters and sentences and in bigger pieces. So it's the same as kata. Like I find um, kata is, and I've said this a lot on my channel. Kata is a biomechanical alphabet set, and that's all it is. It gives you a bunch of shapes. And throughout this seminar, I mean, it was a great example of how both of us were utilizing core biomechanical principles from kata, but that overcorrection wasn't even there because, like, for example, like, do that move from, that one where you're punching down, but you did it over
Oh
here.
yeah, yeah.
So,
So the Jushiro movement,
yeah,
one,
yeah,
two, we're punching horizontally, of course, like this, where the punch goes
yeah. So,
under the hand.
so that punch is going horizontal with this hand over here. This hand's over here, and this punch is going horizontal. But that's the alphabet. That's the tool. So the way Sensei was using it as it was a snap down to like a wedge down this way. And people in the crowd were going, "Whoa!" They never thought about it that way. But you see, that's where like it's frustrating that we have to talk and justify all of this because if you go outside of the martial art context, this is learning, right? Like I said to you earlier, like language acquisition is like that. We do not spend years and years just spelling letters, right? We move on. I don't want to.
Yeah,
Yeah,
some people will say you do your kata, and it will make sense someday after whatever 5, 6, 7, 10 years of training. And I would argue that's a bit of a fallacy. And I have heard through online discussions, people have said uh, they've had an altercation and they just did something that came from kata X. And but how often does that happen? And if it does, it's a very slow, inefficient way to learn from balance. And then again, some people will justify it, but um, that slow process is to teach you patience and the long road rather than having quick fixes and develop your skills quickly like we want to do in the West. But I say, what's wrong with learning how to defend yourself in a time efficient, quick manner? If you're training for karate for 3 years and still can't defend yourself, there's a problem with that. It is a martial art. Even if you are very much taking a do approach to karate, you should acquire some fighting self-protection skills from your training.
yeah,
And
yeah.
just doing kata over and over isn't going to magically enable you to block, to stuff, to crash and clinch, to choke, and so on. You have to explicitly train.
Yeah. I mean, just to piggyback off of that, I mean, everyone does martial arts for a specific purpose, and like, you got to know your why. And shout out to Karate Neuss. He kind of drilled that concept to me. You got to know your why, right?
And
Um,
Martin, Chris has been talking a lot about yoga this weekend, so we have to meet sometime.
yeah, 100%, brother. You got to know your why. So, like, even if though you're doing kata for exercise, uh, you're gonna get more benefit if you were to learn practical movement patterns from kata because if you're just staying in one static position, sure you're gonna get muscle memory and sure you'll get muscle acquisition. You'll be practicing certain kind of you'll be training those certain muscle groups, but you could be training that same idea behind say lower movements with dynamic footwork, say weights in your hands, using bands, and just like, interspersing functional exercise with kata movements, right? So, um, anyway, we were talking in the car about do you need kata to functionalize your karate, right? Is kata necessary? So, let's talk about that.
Okay, you talk about different people train karate or any other arts for different reasons, and you have to understand your why. So, if you're training karate just for fitness and for fun, and you enjoy doing your kata and your kion, your step sparring, and that fulfills your needs, great. But we have to be honest with what we are gaining from our karate. So if you're doing
The purpose.
3-step sparring and you're doing your kata, it's like Shotokan Kion is absolutely fantastic exercise. There's long, deep stances, and my legs used to be a whole lot stronger and bigger than what they are now. And I had that explosiveness, but you have to learn how to use explosiveness, not just stand and stance. So if you don't get out of the 3K syllabus, and you don't do any real kumite, real bunkai, not the Japanese
Yeah,
stuff.
the performance
Right.
based
If you
stuff.
don't look at the stuff that we are teaching this
Yeah,
weekend,
yeah,
then you're not going to be able to use it. And if
yeah,
you're okay with that, fine. But we have to be honest with ourselves what we are doing. if you look at my student, I don't spend a ton of time practicing teaching kata. We do it, but I don't spend a lot of time on all those little fine micro corrections as I learn. And for a while, it did bother me a little bit that my students' kata wasn't crisp and fast. But I've accepted that now. They're not going to win kata competitions. That's okay because we don't do competition. It's satisfying to move like that with explosiveness and crispness, be in control of your body, but it is very limited. It's very limited in having transferable skills into actual combat with another body.
So one thing that came to mind in our car chat coming up here was, okay, so Andy, I'm going to talk about Andy's part and even some of the things I did. We ended up in the clinch, and then we ended up on the ground. So how we got to the clinch? We got there.
The drill I was doing.
Yeah. We inevitably, both of us ended up in the clinch. So we came from a long range and we went to the clinch. Our long range expression was, Yakuzuki. I'm not good with terms. What's this one and what's that one called?
Kizamazuki, Yakuzuki.
Kizama, Yakuzuki, and then we did the hook line. What do you call that? Kagazuki. So we did all those different linear and curvature zukis, but we did it from a boxing perspective. Okay, we tied it into karate, but we did it from a boxing perspective. And why? Because the boxing expression is functional, and we tied it into a karate. So, and then once we got into the clinch, I used trapping concepts from my limited knowledge of Muay Thai and Wing Chun and things like that, trapping, moving a barrier and getting in. But it informed my karate because from these other arts, for example, in my case, crashing in and establishing some sort of a necktie, I got that from Wing Chun, the Larp Sao and all these kind of things. But when I realized that coming in with an open hand on the center line, whether you have a closed fist or an open hand, you can deploy these tools in this creative way. I'm seeing now all the other parts of my kata. I can use that same formula, and so I can unlock and make more sense of the kata. So, I've been criticized, and I know Andy has too. It's like, okay, so why don't you just learn Wing Chun, and why don't you just learn BJJ? Why hold on to kata?
Yeah, good point.
Yeah,
and
because it's just BJJ, what you're doing with BJJ, if you think about it.
So back to what are your goals for learning karate?
Yeah.
If you want to learn how to defend yourself and or fight, because that's your consensual, non-consensual violence, you don't need kata, because kata can teach you biomechanics. But again, the biomechanics, as we've spoken before, the biomechanics are a little bit far removed from how you actually need to move for application. For example, after the Nijusho 1, 2, you turn around 180 degrees with this big arm swing like this, and then you do what looks like a double punch. And the way I was using this was a snap down. So your fence is up like this, because someone's angry with you, they're face to face, and so this fence discourages. It says I don't want to fight, but at the same time you're ready. And when they give you that shove, your hands are here. It's boom. It's a quick snap.
Yeah.
So in the Shotokan katas, at least, they've been made big and grandiose and athletic, and they're a bit far removed from the Okinawan ancestral versions. And so instead of this, it's just boom. Boom. And then we use this as a collar tie, like Chris was talking about. I'm getting that. Or you could grab the hair, and then the left hand's throwing. If it's open, it's throwing liver shots. You go back to the clinch, throw some knees. And so this comes back to one of my rules for Bunkai. I started a series, I need to get back to that, so rules for Bunkai, and one of them was to break the form.
Yep.
So you can learn the kata with the big movements as you would do it, but then you break the form to make it work. And I maintain that if you are applying kata movements as is out of the box and with long stances, the big movements in Shotokan kata, if you're applying those to like Oizuki attacks and stuff, you're doing it wrong.
Can I just add that real quick?
Yeah.
And you're doing it wrong because if you were to look at it as a biomechanical alphabet, you can't make words by just putting a bunch of A's there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You have to combine that with other letters and other ideas. So that's why it's wrong.
And just to clarify, when
Yeah.
I say you're doing it wrong, I'm saying if your goal is to use kata effectively to
Yes.
defend yourself,
For self-defense.
then you're doing it wrong.
For self-defense, yeah.
Because you have to, again, break the form. The kata outlines principles. And here, do this. If the enemy does this to you, here's what you can do. If it fails, you can flow into this. It gives you ideas. By doing kata, you can't learn how to do it. It's a very poor instruction manual. It says, do this and this and this. You have to explicitly train on how to do it. For example, and we were talking about just do BJJ, just do Muay Thai.
Yeah.
So I've done some BJJ. I'm a lowly blue belt, so I can't profess to be any kind of expert. But we were doing some things that in my holistic drill where we're striking from a distance. We were doing an oblique kick, jab, cross, step back, round kick, and then they would catch the round kick, take you down, and then there's some ground flow stuff there. So we're doing some chokes. We did a cross collar choke.
Yep.
When you do a cross collar choke, you basically, if you don't know what that is, you have your hands on different sides of the lapels, and you're choking them out. This is just Jujiuki, your so-called X block. But by doing this in kata, you can't learn how to choke someone. You have to explicitly practice it. So because in today's age of karate, the grappling techniques have largely been lost by the traditionalists, we have to go cross-train in arts to learn to better understand our own art. And later in the drill, we did a scissor sweep. So as the person on top in mount is doing the choke, we allowed the choke to fail. So before they get in, the person on bottom held the choke, the first choking arm down, and did a bridge and roll. And then later, then the new person on the bottom did a scissor sweep. And the scissor sweep looks just like the mechanics in Unsu. When you drop to the ground, you do a round kick from the ground. The mechanics are almost identical. So I learned, that's one of the first things I learned in BJJ is a scissor sweep. And then say, that looks like Unsu. And then the last thing we finished with was the bow and arrow choke, which is a nasty choke. I learned in BJJ, but if you look at the mechanics of it, or at least the position, the end position of it, it looks just like Gunkaku, where you have one leg up and you're in this position, or in Chinte, depending on how you grab the leg.
Hey guys, thanks for watching part 2 of 4, Kata in the Modern World. I really hope you enjoyed that. And parts 3 and 4 will be aired at Andy's channel, Applied Shotokan, where we discuss breaking free from form and Kihon. Please subscribe to Karate Unity and Applied Shotokan for amazing practical karate content and the rest of this podcast series.